Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Get In or Get Out, but Don't Stay in the Freaking Middle by Dr. Lia Roth. And this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue. I had a front row seat to betrayal after my parents passed away, and let me tell you, it doesn't just sting, it shatters. It leaves you staring at a version of yourself you barely recognize. When I picked up a book on betrayal that described it as simply a breaking of trust, I felt it didn't even begin to capture what I'd been through. Betrayal tears apart the foundation of who you thought you were. It leaves you asking the hardest question of all. What now? Writing became my way of healing. What I thought would be a single chapter on infidelity in a different book took on a life of its own, growing bigger, louder, and more alive until it demanded its own stage. That's how this book came to be. I spent years writing about shame. It was the topic of my dissertation and a major focus of my clinical work. My perspective. It's refreshingly different. Emotions aren't here to bother us. They exist for a reason. And that reason isn't just homeostasis or balance. It's survival. We're constantly surviving at two levels as biological and social beings. Once we grasp that, everything shifts. It opens up a whole new way of understanding ourselves and the world we live in, what I call being and belonging. Guess what? When you start seeing infidelity through the same lens, something wild happens. Like any type of severe betrayal, infidelity stops being just the wrecking ball of your life and turns into the launch pad. It's here to help you reset, rebuild, and rise higher than you ever thought you could. The ego is your self-feeling, the story you tell yourself and others, and the reflection of how you believe others see you. Egos are dynamic, shaped by relationships and shared dreams. That's why infidelity hits so hard. When someone so close to you breaks that bond, it tears through the framework that holds you together. Betrayal doesn't just break trust, it wrecks your ego, the very fabric of who you are. I started this healing path when my sister Lily, who had been betrayed at the same time I was, called me and said, "Mom and Pop had 3 daughters, but I only have one sister, and that is you." Since then, we've been working together, helping people gain autonomy and start a new chapter in their lives. Lily doesn't just bring her wealth of experience in crisis management, there's more. The love of her life cheated on her with a doppelganger. Mind-blowing, right? Together, we uncovered something crucial. Forgiveness isn't about patching up a shared story with someone who hurt you. It's about reclaiming your power, releasing the pain, and shifting your energy toward rebuilding a life that feels steady, whole, and undeniably yours. Socrates, way back in 470, 469 BCE, believed wisdom was central to happiness, and he was right. Yet here we are, still chipping away at our integrity, all to avoid conflict or discomfort. Still letting fear of rejection, perfectionism, and anxiety distract us from the wisdom we already carry within. For centuries, we've been chasing short-term gains, and somehow we still haven't learned the lesson. What makes this book different? It doesn't just redefine betrayal, it flips the narrative on its head. Forget the idea of patching things in reconciliation, which rarely lasts. Infidelity and severe betrayal demand nothing less than a full reset. You can read this book in a couple of hours, or you can dive in and work through it until its message becomes part of you. That's when this book goes beyond words and tools. It lifts you and ensures you never find yourself in the same mess again. Together, we'll dig into bold frameworks like the binary relationship theory and the concept of self-betrayal, revealing how these patterns pave the way for bigger betrayals. When you stay loyal to yourself and cut out self-betrayal, the risk of getting blindsided shrinks fast. Autonomy becomes your secret weapon, a wisdom that transforms how you approach love, connection, and your own identity. And optimism? It's not optional. This isn't the end of your story. As Nietzsche said, what does not kill you makes you stronger. This bump in the road might just be the universe nudging you toward your full potential. So buckle up. Let's reset, rebuild, and rise into the next chapter of your life. Chapter 1, Proud and Binary. Are you sensitive for the title of this chapter? Yes, binary thinking has gotten a bad rap lately, and honestly, it's not even binary's fault. It's more about people misunderstanding what binary really is. We think it's about 2 elements, right? Wrong. It's never been about 2, it's about 3. You see, when you only have two elements, they end up reflecting each other. They are stuck together. They create a mirror, and mirroring often brings rivalry. Think of this: give versus take, big versus small, pleasure versus displeasure, active versus passive. There's no real interplay, just tension. But throw in a third element, now we're talking. That's where the magic happens, where things can actually move, shift, and grow. When you add a third element, everything changes. Those two pieces, 0 and 1, they are no longer mere opposites, locked in some mirror rivalry. It's the relationship between them that makes everything work. That connection turns duality into something much bigger, something that can evolve and grow. It's no longer one or the other, it's a whole system. Truthful? Guess what? That's what sex is. Sex is not a state you teach or reach. It's a practice, something dynamic and alive. It's not about crossing some finish line where you have arrived, here's your letter. More about living in the in-between, where things move and shift. The truth is, anyone who embraces a letter, whether it's M, F, or anything else, has to learn how to be in this world as themselves. That whole idea of coming out, well, that is not limited to a certain few. We all go through it at some point in life. It's that moment when you tell your parents, friends, and whoever the heck wants to listen, hey, I'm my own person. It's terrifying, but it's also freaking liberating. No matter how difficult that moment is, know this: coming out is only the start. It's not the grand finale, only the opening act. Putting a label on yourself is one thing. Living it is another. Living it takes work. Serious work. Confusion, hesitation, disappointment. They are all part of the process. Joy and pleasure are too. I remember a friend of mine who flew to Florida for surgery. While she was away, I took care of her dog. When she came back to pick him up, I opened the door to let her into my apartment. That place, oh, I can still picture it. Huge windows facing west, where the sunsets transform the evenings into life's celebrations. Gentle reminders to slow down and simply be. We sat down while the coffee brewed in the kitchen, filling the air with its rich, familiar aroma. A moment later, the final gurgle of the pot signaled it was ready. Leaving her on the couch, playing with her dog, I went to fetch 2 cups. That dog couldn't contain himself, bounding back and forth, tail wagging so hard it practically sliced through the silence. As I returned to the living room, I caught her looking at me. Her gaze wasn't casual, it lingered, heavy with something unsaid. I handed her the sugar bowl and a spoon. She took it. The porcelain clink filled the room. I felt the moment tighten. She stood there, one breath away from spilling what had changed with her. I didn't need to hear it. I raised my eyes, meeting hers. I know, I said, the words landing like a whisper in the stillness. I watched her go from nervous, like anyone about to face surgery would be, to almost buzzing with excitement for her orchiectomy. While her hands fidgeted, her eyes showed this particular glow, as if that future she had started to live a few days ago couldn't come fast enough. After a few weeks, reality hit. The electric anticipation she'd been building for years gave way to something quieter, heavier. The finish line she thought she had crossed was only a starting point. Life is not about arriving, it's all about the journey. She still had to figure out what it truly meant to live as her real self. That's the hard part we all have to face one way or another. The part no one really talks about, and what lingers long after wounds or bandages come off. So here's the deal. Be whoever the heck you want to be, but be proud, because it's never easy. Understand that you are practicing being you. You are learning how it feels. Didn't get it right the first time? So what? No big deal. You're practicing after all. Try again. Failure not in the choices you've made. The real failure is living a life that never felt like yours to begin with.